If I have any trouble, I'll just bring it
No, it's not here to go straight to me and straight back.
What a joy it is to hear from other people and to learn more. So we're just thrilled to have the family here. Really appreciate the fact, and some of you know, we were going to have her here in June, and her father died. So we're so grateful. We walked the journey with her, knowing what a difficult time that was for all of you all. But so much appreciate you being here and offering this to us at this time. And one thing as we think about this and why you're here, why you want to learn about this, I am reminded of a quote from the Dalai Lama, which I think speaks to what this is about and hopefully will be tonight, where he says, the Dalai Lama often says that the more we know about each other's traditions, the more likelihood there is for understanding and respect. Let us be open to that as we can learn more about others' faiths, others' journeys, and respect that we are all God's children. We are all one in many different ways. So we're so grateful to have Tenzin Tsapel here tonight. And before I let her speak, our friend back here has something she wants to share with you and invite you. So let us do that.
Hi, my name's Eve Abrams, and I'm with the Osage Forest of Peace, which is a interspiritual contemplative retreat center. It's just 20 minutes west of downtown Tulsa. And our wonderful speaker is going to be there all day Saturday for a retreat called Having a Happy Mind at Christmas, which I know I need. So if you're interested, I don't have a lot of flyers, but I'll leave them right here on this table, or you can just go to theforestofpeace.org and find information. But we do have spots open for a retreat on Saturday.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Tenzin Tsapel, and we're just thrilled to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, I'll tell you right off the bat, I'm on the spot because I don't usually talk about myself. When I'm teaching, I'm talking about Buddhism, so I will probably veer into something I know that feels more comfortable than talking about myself. But I'm happy for you to ask questions, or we can make this very interactive as we go. But I think, first of all, if you wouldn't mind, just turn to the people to your left and right and make them feel welcome. Introduce yourself, because I know you all don't know each other.
Very good evening. Very good.
We're so glad you all are here. So cute. I love your family. Incredible children. Yes, we met her the first one.
I see every day on my way over.
I'm curious, how many of you have ever meditated before?
Can you talk louder?
I'll try. How many of you have meditated before? A few of you, okay. All right, so I thought we might just start with a very brief meditation. I mean, actually, how many of you know how to worry? That's a type of meditation. It's just that we're focusing on the wrong things. We're focusing on things that won't bring us a good benefit. But actually, meditation, I'm just going to jump in here. So I'll get back to me. Hi there. Meditation in the Buddhist tradition means to familiarize or habituate ourselves, our minds in particular, with positive ways of thinking, positive aspects or positive ways of thinking. And so I thought it might be good just to do a short meditation just to bring ourselves fully present. Maybe you already do this as a standard practice in your religion, whatever it is. But if you wouldn't mind, just make sure you're sitting up straight with your feet flat on the ground. And maybe just close your eyes or lower your gaze into the face, into the space in front. And maybe start with just taking a few deep breaths into the body. And as you exhale, just scan through your body to see if there's any tension or tightness anywhere. Just bringing relaxation and a greater sense of spaciousness to the neck and shoulders. It's a place we hold a lot of tension. Also, just take a moment to notice your belly. That's another place that we hold a lot of tension. Just allow the belly to be spacious, relaxed, open, unguarded. We're among friends. We can be unguarded. And also, just notice all the different muscles in your face, around the eyes, around the mouth, the jaw. And just allow all those little muscles that we hold in our face to be completely relaxed and at ease. And for just a moment, bring your full attention into the belly, just below the navel, inside. And notice how each time you breathe in, there's a sense of expansion. And there are sensations associated with that expansion of the belly. And also each time you breathe out, there's a sense of contraction and different sensations associated with the contraction of the belly. So for just a few moments, just allow your attention to be aware of each in-breath, all the new sensations, each out-breath, all the different sensations. Of course, involuntary thoughts will continue to arise in the mind. Just notice that that's what's happening. Involuntary thoughts arising in the mind. But just let them be there like clouds in the sky, just arising, abiding briefly, passing away, not giving them any energy, but just bringing your attention again and again to notice each in-breath, each out-breath. And just be aware of what happens as we bring our attention into our own bodies. And then having quieted our minds just a little bit, we can generate a positive motivation for our time, sharing this time together tonight. So just reflect for a moment how wherever there is space, there are living beings, human beings, animals, insects, lots of different living beings. And wherever there are living beings, there are different states of mind, different emotions, different afflictions, we could say. Afflictions that arise without much control on our part, like anger and attachment and jealousy and pride and resentment, as well as some positive states of mind too. But just notice how wherever there are those afflictions, those negative states of mind, the negative actions follow. The things we say, the things we do, negative actions tend to follow from negative states of mind. And from negative actions comes suffering for ourselves and the people around us. And so for just a moment, think how wonderful it would be if all these living beings met with peace and happiness, never to experience any suffering again? How wonderful if all of us, all of our brothers and sisters, were completely free of suffering, all the different kinds of suffering, physical, mental, emotional. What a different place we would be living in if that were the case. And also just checking for a moment, what is my capacity right now to bring peace and happiness to others, to free them from suffering and the causes of suffering? What is my ability right now to do that? Probably for most of us it's quite limited, it's quite restricted. And so we can generate a strong motivation that by learning a little bit more about our minds, our hearts, learning a little bit more about these different states of mind, let's aspire to develop more of our good heart, our good-heartedness as human beings, so that we can actually be of greater and greater benefit to all living beings. So if that suits you, if that accords with you, just see if you can generate that positive state of mind. And then just take another deep breath into the body, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Okay. How'd you go? You feel a little lighter, a little more relaxed? Isn't it amazing? Just 3 or 4 minutes of focusing on the breath, it completely changes the internal environment. That's available to us 24 hours a day. We can do that at any moment. We can consciously bring that to ourselves. So, all right, I was invited to talk a little bit about myself. It's, like I said, it's pretty uncomfortable to do that. But we'll start there and we'll see where we go. And again, if you have any questions along the way, just shout it out or put your hand up, that's fine. My birth name is Lynn Gevitzberger. This is my dear mother right here. And when I was in high school, I went to Bishop Kelly. And when I was in high school, there was a Catholic brother who was visiting from Singapore. His name was Brother Joe. And one day he was watching us play tennis, and he said to a couple of us, "I can help you with your tennis game if you like. I can teach you how to meditate." Now this was 1974 or 75. You know, the Beatles had gone to India. They were doing it. I mean, it was really popular to think about meditation. It was very esoteric and it was groovy, right? It was the thing to do. And so I thought, well, sure, why not? I'd like to know how to meditate. So I remember going over to the school one day, and he just taught me some very simple breathing meditation, like we just did. And he also had this little machine that he put around my head. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was a little machine, and you could actually see what brain waves, like it just in a general, like theta and beta, and you know, just general brain waves that were going. And I could see that I could actually make a difference by what I was focusing on as to what that little machine was saying. And so that got my attention, very strongly got my attention. And so I started meditating at home, and of course my mother would come in and say, "Stop that. I don't know what you're doing, stop that." So after I finished high school and went through university, I was very interested in knowing, why are we here? Why do people suffer? These were big questions for me. Why are people killing each other? You know, this was during the Vietnam War when it was televised. That was the first war that was televised. And I remember watching these scenes of war thinking, this is crazy. Why is this happening? And so these were things that were moving within me. I also remember in my sophomore year in high school having a conversation with my theology teacher, Sister Rose. Any of you have Sister Rose? About karma. I didn't call it karma, but I was explaining to her cause and effect. This is how I think the world works. And I remember her saying, "You really think that's how things work?" But for me, that made sense. Now, because of that incident, and also the fact that I was so taken with just being introduced to meditation that I wanted to do it every day. From a Buddhist point of view, we'd say, oh, you had karmic propensities. You've done that before in previous lives. That's why it's so familiar to you. That's why it feels familiar. But I went through college. I did a lot of Bible studies in college. I was really searching for some truth, some answers, to figure out what I was going to do with my life to make a difference. And when I finished university at the University of Oklahoma, I was looking at grad schools, and I ended up in Seattle at the University of Washington, where I studied hospital administration. And very shortly after I moved to Seattle, I met up with some people who were involved with what's called Theravadan Buddhism. They were doing a process or a technique called Vipassana. Probably many of you have heard of that or done some Vipassana courses. And I very quickly got involved with doing some retreats and doing a daily practice because for me personally, what I enjoyed about it was, well, two things stand out. One is that it's very experiential right off the bat. Just like in those first 3 or 4 minutes, you have an experience of how what we do with our attention makes a huge difference in what we experience. And so Vipassana is very experiential. And it also has this beautiful byproduct of making you feel quite peaceful. So I was involved with doing Vipassana for about 10 years, doing different retreats and doing a daily practice. And I noticed that I was quite peaceful as long as I was sitting on my cushion. When I got up, I still had some afflictions, anger and attachment and different things. And so I began to investigate and discovered that there are many different types of Buddhism, actually. The interesting thing about the historical Buddha Shakyamuni, who lived about 2,550 years ago or 60 years ago, is that after he achieved enlightenment, this awakened state, where he had completely purified his mind of all defilements, he just began walking through northern India. And whenever he would meet somebody, because he was clairvoyant, he knew exactly what they needed to hear to make their next steps in their spiritual development. And so to some people he taught some things, to another person or another group of people he taught something quite different. In fact, if you took all of the teachings that he gave, you might think, well, either he was pandering to the crowd or he was confused, because it would sound contradictory if you didn't know that what he was doing, he was teaching to individuals and their capacities. But in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, one of the early scholars around the year 1000, he took all of the teachings that the Buddha had given, or at least a majority of them. They say the Buddha gave 84,000 teachings in his 40 years of teaching. And this one scholar, Lama Atisha, he organized those teachings in a very systematic way, what we call now the Lam Rim, or the graduated path to enlightenment. And so if you have looked at or studied that Lam Rim, that graduated path to enlightenment, you can understand how different teachings are appropriate at different times. So for certain groups of people, there are more introductory teachings that are really about the happiness of this life and the happiness of future lives. In the Buddhist tradition, there's this idea of the thing that is most enduring about us is our mind stream. Our mind stream, not our brain. In the Buddhist tradition, the mind and the brain are two different things. The brain's made of matter. It's something that we can measure, we can look at. The mind is considered non-material. Whoops, I veered off my subject, didn't I? I'll get back to me. So Lama Atisha took all of these different teachings and he put them in a systematic way of studying. So the initial scope is really discovering about how it is that we create causes to make sure we get a good future rebirth. But the fact is, all of us, I'm going to speak from a Buddhist point of view. I hope I don't offend anybody. But from a Buddhist point of view, we all have a good rebirth right now. We're humans. Maybe some of you never thought we could be anything other than humans. But if you think about it, a non-material mind stream can be propelled into any kind of body. It's interesting to think about. But also, even though we're in this perfect human rebirth that we have right now, I would venture to say that most of us have some suffering, right? There's obvious suffering, physical suffering, Suffering of aging. How many of you enjoy aging? Isn't it just the most fun you've had? The suffering of sickness, the suffering of death, that's something that all of us get to look forward to, isn't it? By having a body, we get to look forward to death, separating from what we identify most strongly with. So even practitioners of the middle scope of the Lam Rim are trying to overcome this uncontrolled state that we have. You see, right now we like to think that we're in control, don't we? All of us like to think we're in control. And some of us are control freaks. We're really good at being in control. But when we get right down to it, like, for instance, when we observe our minds, are we in control of our thoughts? I'm not, even after years of practice. You know, that's a daunting thing to accomplish. Are we in control of our emotions and, you know, when they arise? Are we in control of that? So to a large degree, we are not in control. And that's really one of the greatest sufferings that the Buddha identified, that we don't have control at the most fundamental level. And so it begs the question, doesn't it? Well, is it possible to actually have control at that level of even our thoughts and the things that our thoughts inspire us to do, our actions? And then looking at the Lam Rim, even the greatest scope of the Lam Rim, or the scope of practice for the most accomplished practitioners, there are practices there to help us develop the most far-reaching, the most altruistic wish, which is to achieve the perfection of our own minds so that we can turn around and teach others to do the same thing. You see, the fact is, from a Buddhist point of view, and this is something that really got my attention, from the Buddhist point of view, they say that the nature of our mind is pure. It also happens to be clouded or obscured, we could say, by different afflictions that we've generated, different negative states of mind, like anger, attachment, those sorts of things. We're all familiar with those, resentment, the things that wake you up at night, you know, those.